Leroy Dumbrell has become emblematic of a troubled legacy, entrenched in a cycle of violence and crime that has gripped his family for generations. His life is intertwined with that of his brothers, Warren and Jeffrey, both of whom have made headlines due to their involvement in serious criminal activities. This extended narrative explores the complex backgrounds of the Dumbrell brothers, the criminal behaviors that defined them, and the far-reaching consequences of their actions on their victims and families, as well as the societal implications of living in a community plagued by violence. The Dumbrell brothers were raised in an environment where crime was not just a possibility, but a normalized aspect of life. Growing up in Dublin, their formative years were shaped by social-economic struggles, compounded by a lack of positive role models. Their parents struggled with their own issues, leading to a chaotic home life that left the brothers vulnerable to the allure of street life. The family history reveals a pattern of violence that began early on, with stories of relatives involved in criminal enterprises, setting a troubling precedent for Leroy and his brothers. Each brother, including Leroy, seemed to be molded by their circumstances, leading to a trajectory marked by brushes with the law and a gradual desensitization to violence. As children, Leroy and his brothers were frequently exposed to gang culture and street violence. This environment not only normalized aggression, but also instilled a belief that power and respect could be gained through fear and intimidation. Instead of finding solace in education or constructive activities, the brothers gravitated toward criminal behavior, believing it to be the only viable path to achieving their goals. By the age of 20, Leroy Dumbrell had amassed an alarming record, with over 50 criminal convictions primarily for violent crimes. One of the most notorious incidents occurred in 2006, when Leroy was involved in a brutal robbery. During this event, he attacked an ordinary citizen, inflicting severe injuries that left the victim permanently disfigured. This attack not only highlighted Leroy's violent tendencies, but also showcased his willingness to harm others for personal gain. As a result, he received an 8-year prison sentence, marking the beginning of a tumultuous relationship with the criminal justice system that would define much of his adult life. While incarcerated, Leroy's behavior continued to reflect a propensity for violence. Reports indicate that he formed alliances with various gangs, including associations with the Brian Rattigan gang, known for their violent tactics. His time in prison did little to deter his criminal inclinations. Instead, it seemed to reinforce them. Leroy often found himself in altercations, indicating a refusal to abide by prison regulations and a tendency to escalate conflicts. Rather than seeking rehabilitation, he embraced the prison culture, viewing it as an extension of his life outside. Leroy's prison records reflect numerous instances of disciplinary actions, including physical confrontations with fellow inmates and staff, further illustrating his deep-seated issues with anger and authority. His ability to manipulate situations for his advantage and his knack for intimidation only solidified his reputation within the prison system. His connections to gangs continued to grow, enabling him to wield influence even behind bars. Leroy's brothers, Warren and Jeffrey, also became notorious figures in the criminal landscape of Dublin. Their infamy peaked with the tragic murder of Christopher Cawley in 2006. This high-profile case drew significant media attention and public outrage, painting the Dumbrell family as one of the most dangerous criminal families in the region. Warren, 36 at the time, and Jeffrey, 30, denied the murder, but were ultimately found guilty by a jury of Cawley's brutal stabbing, which occurred during a confrontation involving their younger brother. The trial revealed the horrifying details of Cawley's death, including the fact that he was stabbed 6 times in front of his wife and 2 children. The brutality of the crime shocked the community and highlighted the extent of violence that the Dumbrell brothers were willing to inflict. Witnesses described how Warren was armed with a knife while Jeffrey wielded a hurley, and despite their defense claiming they acted in self-defense, the evidence overwhelmingly suggested otherwise. In the lead-up to the murder, the circumstances surrounding the confrontation were deeply troubling. The altercation reportedly stemmed from an earlier argument between Cawley and the Dumbrells' younger brother, which escalated to a planned fight. However, the brothers' intentions were far more sinister than simply confronting Cawley. They arrived at the scene with the intent to inflict harm, as evidenced by the witness testimonies during the trial. The aftermath of the murder deeply affected the Cawley family, with victim impact statements revealing the emotional devastation they suffered. Jeanette Cawley, Christopher's wife, expressed the profound loss experienced by her and their 6 children, noting that the youngest still waited for their father to return home. The trauma inflicted on the children, particularly the one who witnessed the murder, emphasized the long-lasting impact of the Dumbrell brothers' violent actions on innocent lives. Jeanette's statement poignantly conveyed the sentiment that their family would never be whole again, with her children forever marked by the violence they witnessed. In July 2008, the initial convictions of Warren and Jeffrey were overturned by the Court of Criminal Appeal, citing that the jury had potentially been influenced by a lecture given by the trial judge about the seriousness of knife crime. This led to a retrial where both brothers were found guilty again and sentenced to life in prison. The court's decision underscored the gravity of their crimes and the judicial system's commitment to holding them accountable for their violent actions. The second trial, while harrowing for the Cawley family, ultimately served justice, reaffirming the legal system's stance against such brutal acts of violence. Warren and Jeffrey's repeated convictions highlighted not only their individual failings, but also the broader issues within their family. The cycle of violence perpetuated by the Dumbrells reflects a troubling reality for many families caught in similar circumstances, where criminal behavior becomes a normalized aspect of life. The state of their family, marred by crime, reinforces the notion that without intervention, these cycles can perpetuate across generations. In contrast, Leroy continued to navigate his own legal troubles outside the spotlight of high-profile cases like that of his brothers. Despite having a lengthy criminal record, he failed to reform. Reports indicate he was involved in a prison riot in Clover Hill in 2015, showcasing a continued pattern of aggression and defiance even while incarcerated. His inability to control his violent tendencies raised concerns about the safety of those around him, both inside and outside prison walls. Leroy's actions during this riot were particularly telling, as he incited violence among inmates, demonstrating his willingness to resort to chaos as a means of asserting control. Prison served as both a refuge and a battleground for Warren. He was moved in and out of various correctional facilities, each time building a reputation as a dangerous individual. His time in Mountjoy Prison, notorious for its overcrowding and violence, was particularly formative. Here, Warren crossed paths with other notorious criminals, including Paul Ward, who had been extradited from the UK to face charges related to the murder of journalist Veronica Guerin. This violent environment further conditioned Warren to view the world through a lens of aggression and hostility. During his imprisonment, Warren and Ward formed a bond over their shared grievances regarding the harsh prison conditions. They commiserated about the inhumane living situations, where inmates were often forced to slop out, using buckets as toilets in overcrowded cells. This shared anger ignited a spark of rebellion, leading to a violent siege in Mountjoy that would become a defining moment for the prison system. The hostage situation, orchestrated by Warren, lasted for an astonishing 53 hours. Warren, described as the ringleader of the riot, terrorized the hostages with threats of violence and death. Prison officers faced mock executions, leaving them in fear for their lives. The violence of the Mountjoy siege brought to light the dire conditions within the prison system, forcing authorities to confront the reality of overcrowding and inadequate treatment of inmates. The hostage situation intensified public scrutiny of the prison system, emphasizing the need for reform. While Warren's notoriety only grew after the violent incident, The consequences of their actions had far-reaching implications. The story of Leroy Dumbrell and his brothers is a sobering account of the consequences of a life steeped in crime. Their actions have not only shaped their destinies, but have also wreaked havoc on the lives of others, leaving lasting scars on victims and communities. As they serve their sentences, the effects of their choices continue to resonate, serving as a grim reminder of the devastating impact of violence. If you found this video insightful, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe for more true crime content, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe.